Okay. Let's see. Am I recording right now? Can you tell?
Mm-hmm.
It says I'm recording.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. Welcome to session six. So week six of our meetings here. This one's talking about overcoming anger. This is one that I can relate to a lot, just with my childhood and other things going on in my home. So yeah, I'm excited for this one. Some key concepts to be aware of is becoming aware of the devastating effects of uncontrolled anger on family members, understanding how they become angry and the need to take care of the responsibility for anger problems, learn ways to control and overcome anger, and develop a relapse prevention plan so that anger problems do not reoccur, is what it's supposed to say. So this is the boiling pot activity. I did kind of brief you a little bit about it. It says 10 things. It's up to you if you're not able to think about 10 things on both the easier part and the heavier part. Essentially what this activity is about is it's about if you think of you're making spaghetti on the stove and you turn the water too high and you've walked away and that water just keeps boiling, boiling, boiling and is now spilled over. What are some things that you do or what are some things that take you to that point? Maybe we can list five things that are like the big stressors that really push you over and five and yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit and then we'll think about five things that lessen your heat and why we think that is. So um yeah, I'll give you a few seconds here to think about just five things that um makes your water boil internally.
I can think of one, maybe two.
Okay. Yeah, I can share mine and then maybe you can think about it a little more. My five things would be my children, not in like the negative sense, but just the stresses that come from that. Finances, money. A big stressor that I'm dealing with currently is my both of my vehicles are not running properly, and I can talk to you on the phone about that later on. Let's see. I don't like things that are unclean. That really bothers me when things are just out of place, I guess. And the last fifth one would be just the stresses I have of the unknown of what's going to happen tomorrow. I know, of course, nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Um, but it's just one of the stressors that bother me a little bit. What are your things? If you can't think of five, that's okay too.
My sister, um, my in-laws, where we're going to be in the next 3 or 4 months, and money.
Yeah. Yeah, money's a big stress for sure. Um, and I think even if you feel like you have enough money, you don't have enough money, you know? It's that
Mm-mm.
uncertainty, and that's really hard. Um, and what are some things that kind of lessen the boil, I guess, in your mental? For example, you did a great one before we started the meeting about kind of walking away. That's a really good one. Do you have
Walking
any?
away,
Mhm.
listen to music, take a drive, go eat a gallon of ice cream. No, I don't do gallon ice cream.
It's funny you mentioned that. Earlier in my class, I had earlier this morning, my teacher was talking about this activity, and I mentioned that's one of my things that de-stress me is eating ice cream and watching
Mm-hmm.
something mindless like YouTube or Hulu or whatever else is going on.
TikTok,
Yeah, just something mindless
TikTok.
where you don't need to think. You know, another
Mm-hmm.
route I have is playing sports or video games, things like that. Again, another mindless activity. I too like to get away, go on drives. It really depends on where I'm driving to and what state I'm located in. Um,
Yeah.
if I take a drive here in Idaho where I live, this is recorded, so I won't say exactly where I'm at. Um, but like I'll take a drive to the temple, and that's a great
Yeah.
de-stressor. But, being from California, you've been to Idaho and how the drivers are here compared to
Yeah,
there. Everyone goes a little slower here, and that's okay.
not here. Not
Um,
here. I've seen almost four wrecks this morning.
yeah, it's unfortunate. Um, and yeah, any other thoughts before we move on?
Talking to you boys,
Do you
that's a big
stress you?
discuss. Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think talking to family for sure is of course depends on who you're talking to.
Mhm.
Your family, but we all have those people who we can kind of turn to and know no matter what the discussion is or what your issue that you're having is, it's going to be a good conversation.
Mhm.
That's really good. And this is the next quote here is from President Gordon B. Hinckley. He was a prophet of the church, two prophets ago. Um, so like the person that heads the church, if you're able to understand that. So, and he mentioned temper is a vicious and corrosive thing that destroys affection and casts out love. Satan seeks to stir up anger and cause contention in families. I just really like that because it's true. Satan doesn't like us to be happy and doesn't want us to do well and do the things that we've been set out to do here on earth, and he's there to mix in everything, and turn words around or get our minds going in different places. And, if we're not able to control our anger, a misunderstanding can turn into a huge ordeal, you know.
Mhm. Yep.
Excuse me. Now this is going to be going out of our pamphlet here. Sorry. I'm gonna get out of that there. I'm gonna turn to my book. Are you able to see this book here?
I can see the words, but I can't make out what they're saying.
No worries, I'll just read it to you. So the cost of anger is what we're gonna be going over. Excuse me. The cost of anger. Actually, let me make it a little bigger. I got new glasses, but hard to see.
Should have your daddy on this one.
The cost of anger. A parent is less likely to respond to a child in anger when the consequences appear too costly. Unfortunately, many parents get angry with their children because they perceive the cost of their anger to be relatively low. They are much more likely to lash out at their children than to direct their anger at a friend, an employer, a police officer, or a respected ecclesiastical leader. However, the long-term costs of venting anger at one's children far outweigh possible benefits. Costs include the following: the loss of the spirit, loss of respect, loss of friendship, loss of self-confidence, guilt, strained relationships, damage itself or others, children who fear rather than love their parents. And has there been a time in your life that you lashed out in anger and hurt someone else but didn't really mean to? And then,
Multiple times.
and another thought going off of that um, is why do you think that is? Why do you think we hurt our loved ones, those that are closest around us, than lashing out at the real problem? Let's say you got a ticket. Why did you not get angry at the police officer, but yet you yelled at your child? Why do you think that is?
You just hurt the one you love. I
Just-
don't know why it is. And maybe it's
Hmm.
easier to lash out at the person instead of dealing with the person that, the cop. Because you yell
Yeah.
at a cop, you're in the backseat squad car. Yell at your child, you're making up for it.
Yeah, I really like that. And I also don't have the answer. The one thing that came to my mind when preparing this lesson, excuse me, when preparing this lesson is those around us, I feel that we think of ourselves as over them and we know the response that we're going to be getting from them. If we lash out of anger and we don't mean it, the response we're going to get is, well, I'm sorry, like lashing out at your child. Well, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry, Mom. Well, that's a lot easier to hear than yelling at your coworker. What are they going to say to you, that's the only thing that came to my mind when I heard that, but I did find that interesting about that. But anyway, perfect. All right, here's another video here. If you can't hear it, let me know. And if you can hear it, just don't say anything. I'll assume you can hear it. Hmm.
Ever feel like your consequences keep going up and all you feel like is my kid still doesn't care? It's a really common problem, and we'll start first with an easy fix. Most of the time, when consequences keep getting bigger, it means we keep getting more emotionally involved. So, one of the biggest things to do is when you're giving a consequence is make sure everybody's back to emotional zero. So, when a negative behavior occurs, signal them this doesn't work, and then let everyone take a time out or a brain break. When you're going to come back and give consequences, you need to be in a place where you feel neutral. Sometimes you need to call a friend, do something else, go yell in the room, whatever it takes. But once you're neutral, that's when you set consequences. Okay, so one of the easiest systems is actually to have the consequences ahead of time. Make a minor and a major list of things that people can't do in your house. So some minor things could be being disrespectful at the table, some things like watching TV when you've been told not to. Major things are more like curfew problems or high levels of disrespect, or certainly something like hitting a sibling. Know ahead of time what the penalty is. So minor things can be losing 15 minutes of electronics. Major consequences include things like being grounded or potentially having breaks from friends or other activities that they like. Once you know the consequences and everyone is calm, then you sit down and deliver what they are. A lot of people want a big emotional response when they deliver a consequence. Kids tend to move on quickly, and as adults, we feel all that hurt, all that frustration. So until you're neutral, it's likely you're going to keep building and building and building. Effective consequences actually last short periods of time, but aren't fun. So if your kid is continuing to dawdle around and isn't getting something done, what I like to do is say, actually, you owe me this time. So you owe me the 15 minutes that you were doing something when we had another place to be, but I get to pick when it is. So for instance, if you have a favorite TV show, then I get the first 15 minutes of the TV show. The key is that it's not that your show starts 15 minutes later, it's that you miss the first 15. What about removing privileges? This is a big one for teenagers. This is a place where escalations really do get out of control. If you are in conflict in the moment, you tend to say, okay, that's another 15 or that's another 3 days. So first off, we're back to neutral. If they're continuing to escalate, then you can add on time, but it's more effective to add small pieces of time, hours rather than days. Because if you get to the point where someone has a multi-week consequence, the only game in town at this point is to beat you at caring less or being upset for all of those pieces. The key for a consequence, short amounts of time that are unpleasant and are decided on long before there's a whole bunch of conflict. If you feel like you've tried all of these things, you're neutral when it happens, you're using agreed upon consequences, and you feel like things keep escalating out of control, it's a good time to get more help. Talk to your pediatrician or child psychiatrist and see what's happening emotionally. Sometimes kids don't feel like they're being heard in the moment. Ever feel like your consequences keep going?
Sorry, I pushed the button. We'll see in the video anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts when you were watching that video? Came to mind.
I kind of like how she's saying different consequences when they get older. You don't want to take away, like, if they did something wrong, you don't want to take away 3 or 4 days away. You want to take, like, if they want to use their cell phone, take it away for like 30 minutes. And, you know, like, you owe me 30 minutes. Take away something they like.
Yeah, definitely. No, excuse me. I really enjoyed that. I really like that as well. One another thing that really stood out to me was when she mentioned to have the consequences already like in your mind, like thinking about it before becoming angry. Let's say, I mean, it didn't happen to us, us meaning me or Alex, but
Uh-huh.
when we think about a child that you catch drinking alcohol at a party or something,
Yeah.
um, where is your mind gonna be when you're initially hearing it and dealing with that? If you were to deal with that child the moment you find out that's what's going on, your anger and frustrations are going to be through the roof compared to if you, okay, if this scenario happens ever to my child, how am I going to react? Because that
Yeah.
reaction, from what I've learned in other classes, is going to really take a toll on their lives as well. If you lash out, they're gonna be frustrated at you, even though they made a mistake, but they're mad at what just happened. They're disappointing themselves, and their reaction from you and how you react to it will play a huge part in their lives, the rest of their lives. So I think it's important to already have those thoughts in mind before handling the situation, because it might get out of hand.
Yeah,
You
it'll
know,
blow.
yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example. Tonight, for instance, Dallin wanted a toy, and I don't mind getting him a toy. When my son wants a toy, I give him a toy. You know, Today he wanted 4 toys. One of those toys, again, living in freezing cold Idaho, he wanted um water balloons.
Ooh.
And I don't mind. I don't care. Number one problem I have is we'll use the water balloons for who knows how long. But he was throwing a tantrum, like, you know what? We're just not gonna get a toy. So he just lashed out, and I just lifted him up over my shoulder and walked out the store. Well, while we're sitting in the car waiting for my wife to come, um, he was not being very nice at all. And I was getting very frustrated, and I was raising my voice. And it was something, and he he's dealing with health issues as well, so he doesn't know what's going on. He's been up, for nearly 24 hours at that point, so that was why. But if I would have had that thought in mind, like this gal here had just mentioned, I'm sure it would have been a better night for him and me as well. So I just really like that.
Yeah.
This next one here is going to be that talk I was talking about. So we'll listen just for a few minutes on this one.
Okay.
Brother Monson, I'm looking for you to dye your hair. I beloved brethren, wherever you may be, here in the conference center or in a church hall far away across the seas, what a remarkable thing it is that we can speak in this conference center and that you can hear what we say in a place as far away as Cape Town, South Africa. I have chosen tonight to speak to the subject of anger. I realize that this is a little unusual, but I think it is timely. A proverb in the Old Testament states, "He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city." It is when we become angry that we get into trouble. The road rage that affects our highways is a hateful expression of anger. I dare say that most of the inmates of our prisons are there because they did something when they were angry. In their wrath, they swore, they lost control of themselves, and terrible things followed, even murder. There were moments of offense, followed by years of regret. This story is told concerning Charles W. Penrose. He was a convert to the church and served as a missionary in England for some 11 years. When he was released, he sold some of his belongings to pay for his trip to Zion. Some of the saints observing him said that he was selling church property. This angered him so that he went upstairs in his residence, sat down, and wrote these verses, which are familiar to you. School thy feelings, O my brother. Train thy warm, impulsive soul. Do not its emotions smother, but let wisdom's voice control. School thy feelings, there is power. in the cool, collected mind. Passion shatters reason's tower, makes the clearest vision blind. School life feelings, condemnation, never pass on friend or foe, though the tide of accusation, like a flood of truth, may flow. Hear defense before deciding, and a ray of light may gleam, showing thee what filth is hiding underneath the shallow stream. School thy feelings, O my brother, train thy warm, impulsive soul. Do not its emotions smother, but let wisdom's voice control. Many years ago, I worked for one of our railroads. A switchman was aimlessly strolling about the platform one day. I asked him to move a car to another track. He exploded. He threw his cap on the pavement and jumped up and down on it, swearing like a drunken sailor. I stood there and laughed at his childish behavior. Noting my laughter, he began to laugh at his own foolishness. He then quietly climbed on the switch engine, drove it over to the empty car, and moved it to an empty track. I thought of a verse from Ecclesiastes. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. Anger is the mother of a whole brood of evil actions. I clipped from the morning newspaper a story that led off with this.
We'll go ahead and end there.
Brother Monson?
Here we go. So out of those two examples, what kind of stood out to you? The two examples about anger.
Just where he would walk up and ask the guy to do something. That guy could have had a bad day and he just laughed it out.
Yeah, and I love at the end of that, and I kind of related a lot when I'm frustrated at something that really is pointless, but it's, you're really frustrated at something else, but this is the opportunity you have to let it out, so that's when you let it out, and it's the silliest thing. So like you mentioned, the guy was already dealing with something else. He decided to lash out at him right here, President Hinckley, and
Mhm.
instead of getting angry back at him, he just kind of laughed because it was just the silliest thing. Because I'm sure moving the train car was that guy's job. So when he laughed, the gentleman who was throwing a tantrum, what did he do? He laughed as well. So I just think of that like in our life, like how many times have we been in that situation where really it was a bad argument and it should never have happened, but because you were upset about XYZ, that's how it lashed out. I just really liked how President Hinckley was able to hold himself to that. And instead of lashing back out in anger, like, hey, this is your job, he just laughed and it kind of instead of saying it to the guy, is like, well, this is a pointless thing to be angry about. So
Yeah.
excuse me. I really like that too. And I believe this is the last video. This is a in our church every year they put out this youth. It's like a music program thing here. So it's about 3 minutes. It's really good. 4 minutes. Sorry. It's a theme for the youth of the year in 2018.
There is peace in Christ when we learn of Him. Feel the love He felt for us when He bore our sins. Listen to His words, let them come up. If If we know him as he is, there is peace in Christ. He gives us hope. When hope is gone. He gives us strength. When we take no one. He gives us shelter in the storms of life. There's no peace on earth. There is peace in Christ. There is peace in Christ when we walk with him through the streets of Galilee to Jerusalem. Mend the broken hearts, dry the tear-filled eyes. When we live the way he lived, there is peace in Christ. He gives us God. He gives us strength. He gives us shelter in the storms of life. When there's no peace on earth, there is peace in Christ. He gives us strength. We can go. He gives us shelter in the storms of life. When there's no peace on earth, there is peace in Christ. When there's no peace on earth, there is peace in Christ.
Were you able to watch that video?
Yeah, it's just going in and out.
Okay. I just got your text. Are you able to see everything fine now, or was it just the video?
It was just the sound of them singing. I
Oh,
could see
okay.
the video was fine, just in singing, it was going in and out.
Got it. And what are some feelings, I guess, you have from hearing that?
Good feeling.
Yeah. I love that song. That's one of my favorite songs that they have. And in fact, that's what came to mind when I first saw this the topic this week session about anger. So I just really like that. I just love that no matter what life throws at us, there is peace in Christ, how the song goes. And
Mhm.
I just really like that. All right. So now we're going to read a little bit about the causes of anger. Or
Being a hurt cause of anger.
all right, causes of anger. Some parents use anger to intimidate and control their children, to feel superior, and to avoid dealing with problems. Anger may stem from pride and selfishness, such as when a person fails to get his or her way, or from a lack of meekness, and which means patience in the face of words are hard. Provocation, like provoking them. Is what it's saying. Some individuals become angry when feeling frustrated, hurt, or disappointed. Anger often occurs when a person perceives a threat, injustice, or mistreatment to oneself or others. The threat may be physical or emotional. For example, the person may be fearful of bodily harm, humiliation, or loss of esteem to self or others. In the opening case example, Jack felt a threat to his image as a respected father who was in control of his children's behavior. He was concerned that others would judge him to be a powerless and ineffective parent. What are some thoughts that came from that? Do you have anything, or was it pretty straightforward for you?
It's pretty straightforward.
Perfect. And the next one is distorted perceptions. And perceptions of endangerment are often distorted. Too often, anger results when a person wrongly judges the intent of others. He is truly to hurt me. She is keeping me from getting what I want. He doesn't care about my feelings. He's using me. Some individuals get angry almost without thinking. This kind of anger is often difficult to control because it occurs so quickly. In other situations, anger builds slowly as an individual perceives ongoing threats, injustice, or mistreatment. Anger also builds when the person dwells on a situation, engaging in thoughts that are often highly distorted and exaggerated. When individuals perceive a threat to respond to someone in anger, their bodies prepare for action. Their blood pressure increases, their muscles tense, their respiration increases, and their minds focus on responding to the threat or mistreatment. This state of readiness may be released in a single explosive verbal or physical response to the perceived threat, or it might build slowly over time as individuals experience a series of provocations. Anger provoking thoughts increase until a person explodes over a situation, sometimes over something minor that would normally be disregarded. These psychological changes suggest important keys to controlling anger. The best time for a parent to act is on first noticing an increase in stress. The parent can seek additional information about the perceived threat, coming to understand it more clearly. A better understanding may reduce the perception of endangerment, decreasing the possibility of anger. Negative anger provoking thoughts can be replaced with more positive, calming thoughts as a person views a stressful situation more positively. The parent can consider more productive ways to respond to the threat or injustice, a response that will resolve the problem rather than cause it to escalate. A stressed parent can also avoid situations that are likely to provoke more stress until he or she is more relaxed and in control. Then the parent can work to resolve the situation without anger. Did you have any thoughts on this?
I understand about how, you get like anger issues. I've gotten so mad, I've blacked out. I just see the person that I'm mad at is red, and that's all I want to do. I've gotten mad where I've stuck my hand through a wall.
Yeah. And I found it interesting in this week specifically. I won't go into details, but placed on this video. When I was frustrated at something that happened last weekend, when it got re-brought up later in the week, those anger and frustrations that I did not feel prior to this conversation that I already dealt with came back as if it was in the moment again. I found that to be interesting. And
Yeah.
some things here. The next we're going to read about overcoming anger and ways to do that. Before I read this, I know I plan on reading it. I want to kind of go over some thoughts on what you feel might help you overcome anger. Just because as I'm reading it will give the solution to it. So I want to give us an opportunity. So what are some thoughts of ways that you can overcome anger? And we kind of talked a little bit about the boiling pot activity we did earlier. That
Yeah.
that English. That was most of what I guess you could use as well. Um, I know for me, and I kind of cheated. I saw the first one. Prayer was the first thing we're going to talk about when I read this.
Okay.
I found that to be something that, unfortunately, because you would think you would, that was not the first thing that came to mind when I thought about how to overcome anger. But it's the most simplest and probably the most rewarding as well. Especially having heard the song "There Is Peace in Christ" just a little bit ago. Um, that should be our first action to get over anger or frustration or sadness, anything. Any hard day, any hard time is just to pray and just have a conversation with our Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts on that?
You might not think about. I like to listen to heavy metal. My go-to one is Sandman. I don't know why. It has always done it. Or Walk Away. take a walk, go down the street, you know, play with your dog.
Yeah, definitely. I really like that. So this part here is overcoming anger, and I'll just read the blue stuff within it. So prayer, parents should pray with real intent for help in overcoming angry feelings. Fasting and priesthood blessings are also helpful in overcoming angry feelings. Priesthood blessings, prayers, and fasting should be combined with individual effort to change. Resolve underlying problems. Parents should talk with their children and work out the problems that provoke their anger. Most problems can be resolved peacefully. Take responsibility for anger. Parents who have an anger problem must acknowledge that they have a problem and take responsibility for it before they can overcome it. Children may provoke their parents, but the parents are responsible for how they respond. They can learn to control their anger and respond in better ways. I just thought those were all great.
Yeah.
And I like how it talked about how the parents are still in the wrong, but before they can, I guess, overcome the anger and frustration, they need to take responsibility. And I think that's unfortunately a lot of times that gets lacked, where it's just kind of thrown under the rug, like, oh, I was angry, but I was I had the right to be angry. Well, it's true, you are entitled to those thoughts and feelings, but those people on the receiving end, should they also feel like, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any other thoughts on that as well?
No.
And yeah, I know it's kind of a quick lesson with there only being the two of us. It's these lessons go a little quicker. I did have a discussion with my professor this week about that, and she just mentioned that, you know, as long as we're getting it done, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Stop sharing my screen, but I do appreciate you coming and being willing to um to do this with me. I do really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Anytime you need me, I'm here.
I appreciate
You
it.
know that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. But stop the recording now.